everybody!
We all know the Game Awards is good for one thing, and one thing only, and it's not the award ceremony, which caters to the lowest people in the hobby. Those who only care about if something explodes, or if they can shoot it. At least the good part, the trailers, caters to actual gamers. So let's get to my predictions. We're starting off with a banger of a first prediction. I imagine if I get this one wrong, I'll get mauled by some PlayStation mark in the comments. Which is hilarious given people take every opportunity they can to call me a Sony pony. I think it's almost guaranteed to happen that we get some kind of trailer for Marvel's Wolverine, given it's one of the most hyped up games coming in the near future. Plus Sony actually have a game up for an award, that being Astrobot. PlayStation will want to hype up the crowd further by showcasing one of their hotter games, and Wolverine is pretty much the perfect pick, as we know it's coming up very soon, possibly even next year if some of the rumors are to be believed. And let's face it, the superhero bubble is about to burst sooner rather than later. We can mostly blame that on Marvel themselves, as they oversaturated the film market with mostly shitty releases in the MCU. That, coupled with the abysmal management of DCEU, basically means people are bored of superheroes. We're even seeing that squeeze with video games within the genre. Admittedly, the majority of those haven't been good either. Just look at Crystal Dynamics' mediocre Avengers game, or even the shitstorm that is WB Games with some of their later releases within the Batman property. Basically, what I'm trying to say is there's a finite time left for an Insomniac to make bank off of the Marvel games. The end of the universe they've crafted is closer to over than it is to the beginning. I've covered why they need a break from Marvel games after Wolverine in a separate video, so check that out when you're done with this one. But I believe Wolverine has a high chance of showing up in some capacity, even if it's just another cinematic trailer like what we got during the PlayStation Showcase 3 years ago. Just like a certain Crash Bandicoot title, it's about time we got a trailer for Wolverine and saw some gameplay that isn't based around the leaked stuff from the Insomniac hack that happened almost a year ago now. If Sony shows the game off and does it justice, then they might win back some people, given Spider-Man 2's rather divisive response, so at minimum, we'll get a cinematic trailer, but I think a snippet of gameplay is more likely, as that'll drive even more hype. Next prediction. Next up, I want to discuss Fatal Fury City of the Wolves briefly. I think it's probable we'll see a trailer for the game. Given it's coming out in April, and despite being a Muppet and an idiot sandwich, Jeff Keighley does show SNK some love every once in a while. The likeliest outcome here is we'll see one new character shown off, since that would make the crowd pop off, and it'd be a good way to market the game to people who have never heard of Fatal Fury. It won't get as big a response as Mai Shiranui would have, as they've already revealed her, so who else could they show off to elicit a strong response? Of course it's the man she wants to be with, the himbo that doesn't understand that he has one of the icons of gaming, Andy Bogard. Andy is a super popular character, and SNK have already shown him off sporting a new look in promotional images. So clearly he's part of the base roster, so it just makes sense. My outside prediction is SNK may even showcase some gameplay of the various modes beyond just fighting, since modes are now more important than ever in fighting games, as you need robust single-player content to get the casuals invested, and there's only so much of online matches the hardcore player base can take before they're so bored they drop the game. Let's move on to my third prediction. There's not just an elephant in the room, there's a fucking dragon. 12 of them to be exact. Yeah, I imagine my editor is going to roast me pretty good for this bad joke. But next year is going to be an impactful year for the Dragon Quest brand. To round out this year, we had Dragon Quest III HD release. Next year, we're getting remasters of the first two games. So what better way for Square Enix to get people salivating over the brand than to show off a gorgeous trailer of Dragon Quest XII, which is going to be a very important JRPG no matter how you shake it. There's also the fact the Game Awards are typically when the industry has the most eyes on it, so every company involved in it will want to swing for a home run, even if a blooper into the shallow part of the outfield would be the better play. Yes, I'm a sports fan.
I'm breaking the fourth wall.
Hey, America's pastime is big in Japan, and we're talking one of the biggest JRPGs here. I think this is one of the likeliest predictions to happen. I also have it on good authority that Square is currently working on other Dragon Quest projects, which should excite longtime fans, though the earliest we're going to hear about those is during Summer Game Fest. Either way, if I was a betting man, I'd lock this one in for being a guarantee. Anyways, let's move on to the fourth prediction. We're sticking with JRPGs for my fourth prediction, and the game also happens to have a 4. I swear I didn't plan for this to happen. Anyways, I believe we're going to see a trailer for the upcoming remake of Persona 4. This was a lot of people's first Persona game, and that holds true for me. Persona 4 Golden helped me get through the stress of my final semester in college when my body was just breaking down. Either way, we know from a leaker who shall go unnamed, thanks to the frankly skull-fucked crap they pulled, that there is indeed a Persona 4 remake in the works. They said we're at least a few years out from that remake, but I just don't buy it. Remakes typically have lower development times involved. Plus, Atlus will have some of the assets for these characters thanks to them already being in Persona 4 Dancing All Night. Sure, that game is 10 years old, but the character models are of a decent quality. Couple that with Atlus having some experience in Unreal Engine, and the release of Persona 4's remake is closer than you think. It's also not like P4 requires extensive gameplay reworking like Persona 3 did, since Persona 4 Golden, despite having some aged design choices, has much more in common with a modern JRPG, meaning it more just needs a fresh coat of paint to move us beyond PS2 looking character models. Add in a new mechanic or two, and you pretty much have the remake. I think that means an announcement now and a release during the summer like what we got with SMT5 Vengeance this year is a distinct possibility. Though let's keep talking Persona for my next prediction. This one I think is much more likely to happen. This is another prediction where I'm locking in. But this one requires a comically large lock, just like what we saw in The Simpsons at one stage. We're going to see a Persona 6 reveal trailer. I feel this one is super likely, since fans are starting to feel fatigued with Persona 5 release after Persona 5 release. I can kind of see why, as we've now had the Phantom Thieves around for almost a decade.
I'm old, Gandalf.
As much as I love these characters, even I'm ready to move on to a degree, but again, that leaker I mentioned earlier did hint we'd see Persona 6 around now. So I'm apt to believe it, as their information was pretty reliable. Plus, Atlus has Metaphor nominated in a few categories, so they're going to be around. So it makes sense for them to try and win the show by announcing a game that is probably going to carry the company for the better part of a decade. They now have 3 pillars from which to build on, those being Shin Megami Tensei, Persona, and now Metaphor. Also this year, it has honestly been one of their strongest ever. Persona 3 Reload wasn't just an adequate remake that was cashing in on nostalgia. It pretty much has become the definitive version of the game with one exception, that being the exclusion of the female protagonist, which is fair enough. These RPGs are long, and changing the script so much for just one option would create a ton of work. Maybe it'll happen if Atlus do a definitive edition in a few years, maybe it won't. Either way, Reload was a pretty good game. I've actually got a review for it in the works, so subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss that video. Also, in a previous video, I covered how Reload would have been one of my nominations if I was involved with the Game Awards. SMT5 Vengeance was also a welcome release, as that game's vanilla version was confined to just the Switch, and most people took issue with it. Atlus did manage to fix most of those issues for the definitive version, and we got a much better product for it. I'm actually kind of surprised we didn't see it get at least a nomination for Best RPG, which is the weakest category this year after the Game of the Year, because some of the nominations are just baffling.
Tell me when I'm telling lies!
I covered why in a recent video though, and a card for that will be on screen now. But to top off, this year for Atlus, they also had Metaphor, which is their fastest selling game of all time, reaching 1 million sales on its first day. So like I said, a good year for Atlus. Why not put the capstone on this year and announce their most anticipated title yet? Announcing Persona 6 just makes too much sense, and we know it has been in the works for a long ass time now. It wouldn't surprise me if it comes out at some point next year, so a trailer is actually pretty likely. At minimum, we'll probably see a teaser trailer, maybe some gameplay. On to the 6th prediction. It's almost been a year since Tekken 8 launched. This was another game I'd have put in the Game of the Year category, but it got snubbed. Anyways, I think it's probable we either see the last character for the first season get revealed, or we see Character Pass 2 get announced. I think we'll have likely seen the final character for Season Pass 1 revealed a few days prior, since Tekken have their own big event a few days before the Game Awards, so they'll likely announce whoever we're getting next there, since we're now well within the window for the final character actually launching, even though we just got Heihachi around 2 months ago. It makes sense, given new characters are required to shake up the meta of fighting games from time to time. 2 to 4 months seems to be the ideal, as it gives players just enough time for the game to not feel stale. I know some people are saying the final character for Season 1 is likely to be Tifa, but I hate to burst your bubble, but I don't think it's too likely. Sure, she's a great character, and she'd absolutely move a couple copies of Tekken, and she fits like a boxing glove. Yeah, I know, another bad joke. But honestly, she's a far smarter pick for Season 2. Here's why. For one thing, guest characters generally get people to buy games they otherwise would never give a shit about. But they're really meant to inject new life into a tired product. Despite being almost a year old, Tekken 8 doesn't feel tired yet. There's also a ton of fan favorites the roster still lacks. It's lacking Nina Williams and Julia Chang for sure. Either of them will for sure get legacy Tekken players to either return to the game or finally pick it up when they finally drop. So they're better closers than Tifa would be. Plus, just picture this, Tekken 8 will be 2 years old by the time Season 2 starts, which is when you start seeing players tapping out. Typically they're bored of the game and are moving on to whatever the next big fighting game is, or they just go back to whatever their main fighter of choice is. Every member of the FGC has one game franchise they'll always champion. For me, that's Dead or Alive. So even though Tekken 8 is the most Dead or Alive-like fighter on the market right now, if I have the choice, I'm going DOA every time. Just a shame 5 and 6 have booty netcode. At least the girls on the roster have the good kind of booty, which Tifa definitely has as well. Anyways, Tifa would be a real asset as a Season 2 character, either to start the season off or to be the closer, because she'd get Final Fantasy fans to try out a game they'd otherwise just not care about, just like what Noctis did for Tekken 7. There's also the fact Harada-san has been hinting for months that Tifa be included. Couple that with Tekken players basically demanding she be in the game, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. The reason she'd be a strong starter for Season 2 comes down to the fact the second year is where fighters start losing players heavily, so she'd bring a lot back when the numbers start trailing off. But I still don't think she'll kick off the next season because of a trend with Tekken so far. Take a look at the information we have regarding Season 1 so far. It went Eddie, Lydia, Heihachi, and now an unknown character. There's a possibility this trend is broken by the time this video goes up. But it has been man, woman, man, so chances are it's another lady for the final character. And I don't think they're going to double down on genders being the same back to back. So I think, should the trend hold, we'll see a man for the first Season 2 character. So if that trend holds, Tifa is probably going to be the final character of Season 2. Plus by that point, the third game in the Final Fantasy Remake trilogy will probably be really close to releasing, meaning Bandai Namco would want to capitalize on the marketing synergy. Now that same argument could be used to justify Tifa appearing as the final character of this season, as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is already out. Either way, Tifa will appear at some point, it's just a matter of when. Plus Bandai is going to want as many people watching Tekken 8 as possible, and the Game Awards is probably the best time for them to announce or show off the next character. We're sticking with fighting games for the 7th prediction though. It's already been confirmed that 2XKO will launch sometime next year, so I think it's likely we see it shown off during the Game Awards, since its whole intention is to get people who don't play fighting games into the genre. It's also going to be free to play, so that alone is going to get a ton of people trying it out. The fact it's also flashy and looks really good, yeah, I think there's a good chance Riot brings the heat with this game, and we get a trailer showing off multiple characters. I also think we'll see them announce the release date, given that will draw a lot of hype for the game. Honestly, this prediction more comes thanks to my gut feeling and using a bit of logic. It's just the best time for Riot to show what they've got and get the marketing machine rolling for it. I don't have much more to say, so let's move on to my 8th prediction. So far, everything revealed from the Nvidia Shield leaks has come to be revealed, so I think the chances are good Square will finally unveil Final Fantasy IX Remake or the remaster of Tactics. It actually wouldn't surprise me if both get revealed. Again, the Game Awards are a great time to unveil yet-to-be-released games, as it really is a hype machine. Also, ever since those leaks happened, JRPG fanboys have been waiting on tender hooks for Square to finally tell us something about either project. Since the remakes of Final Fantasy VII will be coming to an end soon, they probably want to drive the hype for 9's remake as soon as they can, since that title is one of the more loved games in the Final Fantasy catalog. The Tactics remaster isn't going to drive as much hype, but Square might use it as a fake-out just before they drop the Dragon Quest XII trailer. It'd kind of be like what happened when the WWE re-debuted CM Punk with the company during Survivor Series last year. Just as the show was going off air, the graphics that signaled it was over popped up. The opening riffs of Cult of Personality played over the sound system, and we went out on the crowd going off. That was really strategic by the people in charge of creative. Ever since Punk had been fired from All Elite, there had been speculation he was returning to WWE. And since Survivor Series was in his hometown of Chicago, it was the perfect time for him to return. Also, it was saving the big gun for last. Sure, the crowd popped off when Randy Orton made his return just before this, but they held Punk back for the very end because they knew that would get the fans going wild to close things out, and it'd get the internet talking more. Square Enix could pull the exact same stunt off with this. Use a game like Tactics, which people are moderately excited about, and then get them to really pop off with Dragon Quest XII, which I discussed earlier in the video. I don't think either of these are too likely to happen, but I do think it's a possibility. Anyways, onwards to the penultimate prediction. My 9th prediction is we'll see Sega show off more games from their Revival series. It was a year ago that Sega announced this when they showed off a collection of remakes and reboots they have in the works, ranging from Jet Set Radio to Crazy Taxi, all of which are beloved franchises that hold a lot of water in the gaming industry. So it'd just be right for them to come good a year later with more details. I think we'll see a thing or two, and that's about it. I don't think we'll see Virtua Fighter 6 get shown off, even though Sega did announce that somewhat recently thanks to some of the things they've done. Virtua Fighter 5 Revo for PC is just them playing some of their cards and hoping people are paying attention. Anyways, let's move on to the final prediction. For this, I don't think it'd be that big of a revelation if Rockstar were to show off Grand Theft Auto 6. It's in the most anticipated game category, and I think that's Jeff showing his hand a bit, because chances are he's going to want people going out of the show talking as much as possible. What better way to do so than to reveal its release date? Companies have decided to release games early next year, or hold back on their planned release dates, just to stay out of the way of GTA 6. I've covered how that's a problem in a previous video, card on screen now. At minimum, I think we'll see some gameplay, maybe a few cinematic trailers. Either way, GTA 6 will show up in some capacity, as it'll probably close out the show. Anyways, those were my 10 predictions for the Game Awards. Comment yours below. Thanks go out to my current channel members, R. Campbell and Danny Boy. If you want early access to videos and exclusive content, then click the join button or the link in the description. Also, check out either my video on how the Game Awards have become an even bigger sham this year, or check out my video on the GTA 6 problem. Both are amazing videos that I know you'll enjoy. Until next time, keep blazing that trail.